Hey, everybody, and welcome to Keeping It Spiritually Simple. And today I have a guest, Tony Rodrigues. And guess what? There isn't nothing simple about anything we're going to talk about. Last time Tony and I talked, it was after his series Colony Cavalier book, and now he has a new one out called Project Star Maker, which has a little deeper versions of things that occur, but in mini stories. So it's a different type of read that you could put down and pick up, which is nice. So welcome.
Hi, Sandra. It's great to be here. It's funny so Star Maker is still doing pretty good. It came out, and oddly enough, so they always put your book ranked, especially when it's brand new, so that you can brag about it. And but it's #1 in reincarnation, which I never set out to make it a reincarnation book, but apparently Amazon reads the book, but it's in the reincarnation category.
Interesting.
So there's a bit of that in there, I suppose.
Well, they probably need to create some more categories.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I'm thinking, especially after the second book, and then also so many things that are actually coming out of the woodwork. The most recent whistleblower on SSP and aircraft and all this stuff. And I had a little meditative vision the other day about Hollywood, to me, came out in the 30s and the 40s so they could control the narratives, because I think that they knew ahead of time memories were going to be intact. And how do we hoard it off and blame it on science fiction type thing so it could never be believable? That was just a vision and a download I got just the other day.
You're absolutely right with that. And that's what they do. They're always trying to claim a copyright, so that when somebody comes forward with something they remember, they say, no, you just saw that in a movie. That's the #1 thing that we get, and that's what drives it. So
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then if you think about the mindset of that, and you look back to the movies in the old days, that's exactly what they were doing in the first place with the flying saucer. Everybody was seeing flying saucers openly, and there was a time when it was accepted. The flying saucer phenomenon was accepted before they started the campaign to make it laughable. And then the movies came and kind of explained, you just saw it in a movie, you're dreaming.
Yes.
And because they knew exactly what was going to happen, and they still do.
Well, I know you've been traveling a lot. You've been going on showing up at different people's events and doing your thing, and you look fantastic, by the way. So
Thank you.
Something is working for you. I know you're feeling a little under the weather now, but that happens when we're traveling. We get a little picking up, and of course we've got energies in the air. We've got the Canadian fires in the air. We've got it's hell and brimstone out there, Tony.
It is. We live in possibly the most interesting times that ever were. And I keep saying it over and over again. You can see it coming. And over the next couple of years, there's going to be more and more incredibly weird things. And I always tell that my strategy is not to worry about the volcano. The volcano is going to go off when it goes off. It's not up to me. I'm just going to worry about my own yard and take care of things as best I can, because we live in highly volcanic times, to use a metaphor.
Yes, I totally agree. I know, as you know, I get a lot of spiritual guidance. So it's just myself, my higher self, that talks to me just like I talk to you. And I've just been told, always stay in my lane, just be fully present, embrace everything, be a witness to it, keep your own column of light strong, so that you'll know where you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to maneuver and navigate when the time comes. And all the worrying and pre-setup isn't going to do you much good, except for create more angst in the nervous system. So speaking of nervous systems, I was also thinking, because I know when we spoke the first time, I was saying I just really applauded you for being able to, put your first book together, because going back through memories really stirs a lot of stuff. And I thought I just applauded you for not being medicated under the covers, under the desk, and being a fraction of who you're supposed to be, that you were able to use it as a therapy tool. And of course you had other things that assisted you, but You got the book out there, and it's definitely making its mark on awakening people to things that are occurring.
In the early years, back when it was happening in my youth, in my teens and 20s, I was curled up under the blanket like that and self-medicating. I was processing the the emotional problems. I won't pretend that I won't ever pretend that I'm emotionally 100% sound. You know, like it'd just be foolish for me to say, "Oh, I'm over it all." The book, however, I want to say has not even so much when it was first released, but after here we are a year later, better than a year later, it is a great deal of therapy for me to say, people ask questions and I don't have to recount the story of the bad things. I can just say, look, it's in the book. Please go have a look at the book. And here's some evidence. I just go and kind of recount the points of evidence that have turned up that are very hard to explain away. So that's all I recount. So it's very liberating in that regard, so that I can share my story and both not relive the horrible parts of it. So the book in that regard is very therapeutic. And I would recommend everybody read a book.
Yes. And I mean, I realize that that has a mental and an emotional toll, which places itself in the physical body. But do you remember, after coming back at 10 and being in your room? I remember last time talking about, things didn't look the same, toys didn't feel the same, life didn't feel the same, relationships were very different. I remember that distinctly about our interview. But did you ever notice any physical marks on yourself, or was it all mental and emotional?
The next morning, my mom said I had a mark back here. She said, we were sitting at the breakfast table that morning, and she said, my dad's name was Michael. She said, Michael, he's got a mark on him. Like I had a cut over here. So that was the only mark that I am aware of.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Was
was a
that an
different person.
injection site? Do you think
I
that was
don't know. I think they did a test. I think they did a biopsy of brain tissue there to see if I think that's where in the beginning, they did something to me and they were testing me. It was a biopsy and they were testing my genetics to see if I had the genetics to be used in their program. And I think that was the initial mark. That was what that was. That's my best guess.
Do you think they had to do interchangeable implants for you even before you came back? Do you think they
I
included
hope
like
not.
monitoring and implants?
So I believe, I greatly suspect that there's an implant that doesn't do anything until the last minutes of my life. At the end of your life, you will naturally revisit your life. So your mind, I think it's a chemical process. I think we all do it. And I think in the moment that you realize you're dead, that you're conscious, your brain replays your life for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the implant that they put in me records that rather than recording my entire life. You think about in terms of data, rather than being a live implant that's detectable, that works on, has energy, it just kicks on at those last few minutes and records my life and sends it to them. And then they can send it back to the past. And I think that's what they were doing. They were trying to engineer timelines with me. And they were trying to get it to where I didn't retain my memories, at least into a probable amount. And so that's what the implant that I think is still in me.
Mm-hmm.
That's a guess, though. That's a best guess is what that is.
Yeah, and you can't dwell on it because it'll consume you. You've
No.
already been consumed and enslaved and all kinds of other things. And you have to be able to maintain some degree of separation and freedom and not be interlocked in all of that 24/7, I would think anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, the other thing is that since I've gone public and told my story and got the book out, my life has completely changed into this direction. And I'm working on some really good projects. I've been able to bend it into good things. I want to show you the new book,
Yes.
Star Maker. And it's a little
Yes.
book. It's an easy read. It's a collection of short stories that all have a common theme about a time that I was taken in the middle, that I was recruited and worked on a project building a macro objects such as a star in another galaxy. But the spiritual aspect of that is that there were times when I weaved in and out of being near death. And so because it happened so many times in Peru in the first book, that I began to retain my memories of being near death. And when Jackie Kenner, who is a spiritual medium, she works with people, with near death things. She was helping me co-author the book. She did the editing. And when I told her all those stories, she said, that's exactly what I hear from people. So there was a real similarity. So she's got her own version, her own 3, 4, or 5 chapters, I think, in the book that and then questions at the end of the chapters that reflect on what I remember experiencing, that line up with things that she has heard other people, both experienced herself and heard other people. So Star Maker is a more complex, even though it's a shorter book, it's a more complex thing. A lot of people are giving me really good reviews, and they contact me and they go, I read the book again. That's the other thing, is it's short but dense. So people read it a few times. And they said, I read the book again, and this time I cried tears of joy. And I'm talking already half a dozen people have said the exact same thing to me about that. And I'm shocked by that. I don't know how to take. I'm very happy. The first book, people were crying tears of sorrow. So to have that on the sequel, to have that on that is kind of how I feel about my whole life, really. When you're somebody being greatly abused, especially at a child's age, you just accept that that's your lot in life, that's what's going on. And on some level, that maybe everybody gets abused. You feel that you're normal. It's not until you deal with the aftermath of abuse when you grow up. Like I said, I didn't really have a big problem until my late teens and 20s, when I had this gaping scar that I had no idea what was going on. And that was when the trouble really began. When I discovered that I wasn't normal, that something was wrong. And that's the healing process, right? So to get the sequel out, I feel like I got over it. And when I got my memories back, I was able to really put my finger on things that happened and heal a lot of that trauma. So it's really good for people to kind of relate to that. I'm happy that it translated through in the books.
Yeah, and I'm hearing opening the heart center, but I'm also hearing you're a true survivor story, which gives hope. So I'm hearing heart and hope, because as you're saying that, I'm seeing teenagers who have had many different things occur to them that they don't have full memory of. And so they go into the self-soothing of drugs and alcohol. And that's happened with a lot of the so-called indigos after the harmonic conversion in 1987, when there was an awakening energy and ADD and all these other labels to keep everyone down. There's still a lot of memories that have surfaced. My youngest is one of them. And so we had a lot more cases of anxiety and medications for that, and so on. So many people still haven't been able to come to a place of neutral balance where they can really explore it. And nor have they, as medical fields and therapy fields, have the tools to really help people deal with these kinds of things that have occurred that may be very suppressed.
The medical field, I have always wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, but it's really disappointing. As now I'm in my 50s, so every time I go to the doctor, they're like, my experience of going to the doctor is they go, you might have cancer. We need to check you for cancer. You might have cancer. And if you don't, then we'll find it. If you don't have cancer, we're going to find some cancer in there. Like, that's their whole strategy. It's a one-trick pony, and it's very disappointing. The more I indulge them, the more I'm disappointed.
Yes.
For one, the other thing is, I think that a lot of kids, younger people and adults, and it can be anybody. We can remove the age from it. But I think a lot of people that are masking problems by self-medicating, like you said, with the drugs and alcohol, or even just any kind of addiction, are unaware that they're traumatized. Everybody is sold that you're living this American dream life, that everything's great and normal. You have to put up this front that you're a social media, it's your best picture. And people are not taking time to stop and realize, like, look, I had some bad things happen to me. I have trauma, and do the work and kind of undo it and say, look, I have to unplug from all this trying to act like I'm better or just as good as everybody on Instagram, and kind of do the work. And I think a lot of people are just in denial or unaware that they're walking through life with an emotional limp, and they're not taking care of it. Like, Yeah, they can be fixed, but you have to identify the problem first. That's what happened in my case. I was unaware of the problem. I got my memories back, and I was able to fix a lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah, but on top of that, Tony, you've been able to help others
As a
unlock what,
byproduct,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean, it's like you had the courage to step out knowing how it may and may not be received and how much pain that was going to create in a whole other level, but you still you opened the window and you just threw yourself out it. And that in turn, I think, is helping to awaken others, or at least trigger chords within others that, possibility that something more or deeper occurred. And I can have this courage too to find help
it's
or
very true.
guidance. Yes.
Very true. A lot of people have contacted me. They feel they've been through similar experiences. Another thing that was kind of an unexpected effect of the first book, Series Colony Cavalier. I have that too. Shameless promotion. So there's the book. I just wanted to get it all off my chest, and it turned into a book that people really get a lot of, I don't want to say enjoyment out of, but meaning out of. One thing that happened is people that were not involved with any kind of abduction or any kind of negative thing read the book, and they still have had trauma in their lives. Loved ones gone, whatever, sexual abuse, physical abuse. They live through these things, and then reading the book kind of triggers them. And I've had so many people reach out to me, but like, whatever, they praise me, and they're like, thank you, after I read your book, and it dawned on me what I had gone through, and I'm working on it. And so for me, that's like a huge honor, that it triggers them to the point that they know now that something is wrong from what they thought, that what they went through was settled, and it kind of triggered them, and they realized that there's more work to do. And I think it's a lifelong process. I think at a young age, especially in formative years, when you get abused, that feels like it's always going to be like that. And our media is abusing us too. There's gore and violence on TV. It's unreal. Like, sometimes I'm like, I can't even watch. I want to sit down and just watch. And it's just horrible to see how they put people on television rather than people that are accomplished. They put people that treat people badly. That's a form of abuse. You see people emotionally abused on TV most of the time. And if not, when you watch the fiction, it's always violence and gore every time. And it's abuse. And there's a form of, your mind, your subconscious mind drinks that and doesn't know the difference. And so people don't realize it, that puts them in a state of mind that's not in a natural, not in step with the way that we're supposed to be. And so people kind of gloss, you're in that zombie state, and you just kind of forget about the abuse that happened to you too. It's all one big blending thing. And so when a few people have read my book, they reached out to me specifically and said it re-triggered them, and they started to really open their eyes and realize that they had work to do there. So there's nothing that anybody can't work through. It's just that you have to consciously realize that you need to work through some things. And I think most people are kind of just shifting through life thinking that their life is actually what their Instagram profile depicts.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in denial that anything bad happens.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry if I'm on a rant. Sorry.
No, I love it. I love it. No, you always, I always feel like you're really in tune with the flow of whatever it is that you're talking about. And I appreciate it. And my mind was going to, the younger folks being traumatized, and then the parents didn't have anything really to do with it. I can speak from my own personal experience with my daughter. I knew things were happening. I didn't know that possibly places she was going when she was sleeping was creating that. I know that it created sleep problems. It created me seeing traditional and non-traditional help. And I could look back and I could account for maybe one abuse that occurred when she was younger, but we didn't find out till she was in 11th grade. But there's a lot of parents out there say, no, that didn't occur in this child's life. I still don't understand why their mental status is so distorted and they can't get one foot in front of the other. And so I think stories like this not only help awaken the parents, but also help awaken the chords within their children, no matter what age their children are, because I know it's awakened it in myself. I can go back to a story of when I was 4 years old, fell out of my bed, hit my head on the radiator, had a concussion, was taken to the hospital. I remember driving in my neighbor's station wagon on my mom's lap, my sister in the back seat, the entire conversation. I remember going into the hospital room. I remember what everybody looked like. Next thing I know, I'm alone. There's an observatory window. I remember all the details of that evening. I remember my father coming back and dressing me in my orange dress. I remember it's the first time I ever realized I was naked. I remember coming home and then being able to really tune into people's energy, but I didn't remember anything else about it. So as fast forward, as time goes on, I chalk up my learning issues were from my head injury, right? Dizzy spells, probably from that head injury, until about a few months ago. Robert Earl White and I were about to do a show on something, and I was brushing my teeth, and this whole thing came flying through. So I said, you know what, I'm going to ask my mom a little bit about these details. So I texted her. She's 90. She can outrun me. She's got a memory like a hawk. So she says to me, yeah, I remember when you fell out of your bed. So what about why did you go to the hospital? I said, because I had a concussion. You did? Now she remembered things prior to that and after that. Well, as it turns out, there was no radiators in the house. She never took me to the hospital. When I got home, I remember being put in the bottom bunk, and I remember stories about alligators for periods of time. So it was just very, very bizarre. So then once that kicked in, all those memories didn't happen here on this earth plane in that way, it then began to open me up to other things. And in that questioning, fast forward to just 2 months ago, I went to go lay down for 20 minutes. And within a minute, I'm frozen. I'm completely frozen and wide awake. A being in a space suit appears, takes off the helmet. The strawberry hair comes out. I can't see a face, comes towards me, and I'm fighting like this, takes my hands, locks them onto this ice cold thing on the front, and then puts something into my right temple, as in shoving it in there. And the whole time I'm like, this is gonna hurt, kind of thing. And I could feel it. And then I'm asking questions. And I hear him say, you need to get me out of here. This lady's asking too many questions. She's awake. And I'm thinking, this lady, what are you talking about? So finally he says, okay, you can ask me a question. So I try to get a notepad together to ask him a question. And then he says, here's the question. Ask me what happens when the children escape. And as I go to ask the question, everything goes silver and gold. And then I see these frames of a movie in front of me. And I realize whatever he put in there, whatever I was seeing was either something from the past or something from the future. And I was going to remember it later. But all of this, like, what I would call gold and silver paint then came over the entire vision. And there was this loud horn going off. So loud that I literally sat up in my bed, looked out the window for wherever this horn was coming from. There was nothing there. And then the horn stopped. And then I just was in a daze for a little while. So I have no idea what occurred there. I contacted a healer friend of mine, and she said that it was a Palladian, that I was an emissary, but this was not necessarily one of the better Palladians, but they recognized me as an emissary, and they implanted memories to come up for me to know what to do when the time comes. So I don't know what to make about all of that, but I just know that there's a lot of things awakening in me. And if they're awakening in me, somebody who's really in tune, they've got to be awakening in many others.
I think there's a lot of things. There's a lot of remote contact going on right now. That was a very, a broad experience that you went through. That's actually, excuse me, it actually sounds like a crisscross of other experiences that may be relevant to other times in your life.
Yes.
It's what it sounds like to me.
And there's many other experiences I could go into. But I always ask Spirit, if there's, at least I've learned over the last year or 2 years, to not dwell on it, not to let it get in the mental gerbil wheel and consume me. I've said, if there's something else you need me to know, I'm going to trust that I'm safe, and I'm going to trust that I'm okay. And if you need me to know anything else, you're going to present it. And that's kind of how I stay out of that entrapment of enslaving myself into insanity.
I think you should at least make note of it. Like the instance, you should date it. This happened and this is, and kind of make note of it, because there's probably been things in the past that were related from the same group, the same experience, and there'll be things in the future too that may still be happening.
Yeah.
I think you're at a it's highly probable that more will happen again.
Well, about a month after that, I woke up to a giant red, what looked like a bite right smack dab in a bullseye of a meridian line in the back of my neck. And I have literally no bugs in my house, couldn't figure out how it happened. But the interesting story about that is I'm doing an interview with someone else who's very involved in the aliens, has books out and everything, who told me off camera she herself had the exact same thing occur right about the exact same time. So there's things occurring for sure.
We're in a very dynamic time, a very fluid time across the board. Everybody in the world is in the same boat. The world is changing very, very much so, and there are a lot of external forces that have their hat in the ring. It's obvious. So that's what I mean. Like, the only thing, I don't know what it means. I don't know what a lot of things mean that people come to me with, but my technique is always the same. Create a timeline, write down what happens to you. Let's try to look for cycles. Try to look for things like, does this happen again in exactly 3 months or 6 months? Is it a reoccurring thing? And keep track of the details, because your subconscious mind, the part of your mind that's supposed to forget it is not. And so it's telling you something. There's a message in what you're remembering, because it's something that usually when any ET or external contact happens, they are blocking your memories. That's just a simple thing for them to do on their end. So if you are remembering, then that means your subconscious and your higher self is trying to tell you something. We were talking earlier about parents, how you were saying how your parents were shocked. And I think that parents nowadays are so preoccupied with survival that they're very disconnected from their children and what's going on. They don't, if they don't sit around and have dinner every night, which is rare now, if it's a fast food dinner, and it's rare for the full Monty for a lot of families, they don't catch up. There's not a lot, and even then, it still kind of can be awkward. Like, families don't spend the time they used to, so children are kind of left to fend up for themselves. And it happened with me and my kids too, that things happen years later, and we went, "What, really? That when you were 8?" And not so much abuse, but just things that they were living. They live very independent lives very quickly. And as parents, like I said, we're just so occupied with survival now that a lot of parents are disconnected, and that's a dangerous thing.
Well, because we're leaving the programming up to everybody else.
Exactly.
We're not interceding there with a lot of that. And we already know with all this awareness coming on, what can be occurring and what is occurring. It's one of the reasons why I've always been drawn to work with kids. And I work with people of all ages, of course, but not only to instill in them a little bit of self-empowerment when things occur and to help navigate some of that, but also for the parents to be open and supportive and create that dialogue and that freedom to come and be able to speak to your parent, no matter what age you are, and have no shame, blame, or miffed and befuddled answers.
Punished.
Yes. Like, what? Wait a minute.
Not be punished for being truthful. Like,
yes.
Most children, they tell the truth, they get punished for it. No, that's not right. So, yes. I'm a firm believer too. I think that's the way out of this. The world that we're in right now, they've completely weaponized the school system. It's cranking out kids that believe very wrong things. And the way out of it is to train new kids. So you can't change the politicians but you can change the new politicians that are going to grow up to be so. You can add morals to the children. So education, homeschooling education is probably the silver bullet. So I'm working on that. I have started a company on a learning module based on the software that I remember from my time in space that we used, that was in this book.
Yeah.
And the software learning model was active. It was active, so it would the skill level, it would expand and contract to the performance of the student, and it was decision based. So it wasn't quizzing you at the end of it. It was asking you to make a decision based on what you just learned. And so we're actually quite far down the road in some of the research, and we're working on a preschool version of it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that curriculum will come out. It's so kids can take a class and kind of skip preschool and go straight to kindergarten, because that's a very important year, I think, for parents to get another year with their kid at home. I think when I look back to my kids, I was their whole world until they started school, and then you're not cool anymore. So it's like you lose your kids at that point. So that year is important. It's important for the child to stay home, and it's important for the family, the parents. And so that preschool year is really, they're not learning a lot, but a lot of cultures. So a lot of cultures prepare their kids naturally for what the test, and they go straight to kindergarten at that age, 4 or 5 years old. But a lot of cultures don't. A lot of indigenous cultures, I'm talking about in America, a lot of there's a cultural divide, and people raise their kids different. And so there are a lot of kids that don't get a fair shake at that age. There's nothing wrong with them. They can pass these things. So that's what my course is, it's proof of concept on one end. It's very simple to do the preschool end of it, but I think it's going to it's very necessary. It could make a big impact on some cultural barriers that kids have from entering into the school system. And then we're going to work on a homeschooled version of the same thing, like modules that work in concert with existing homeschooling, because in order to homeschool, mom is tied up for 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day. So if we can have a module, and homeschooling is fairly inexpensive. When you talk about an average kid, the average student in America is funded $12,000 to $16,000 a year is the funding per student. That's the budget, and homeschooling is somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500 a year. So it's pretty affordable at that, right? But the investment is mom's time or dad's time. And so if I can make a module to relieve 3 of those 6 hours and the children learn very quickly, I think there's a great deal of value in that. So that's what we're working. It's called Maple Street Learning. And I've got some absolutely brilliant people on board that are working with me. And I have people that are helping me out with the funding. It hasn't been a problem. And so it's gaining traction. It's a result of my books coming out and me telling my story. It really is. And it's where my life is going right now. Like, I'm 51 years old, and my life is turning on a dime. Literally, my whole entire life is changing around this. So it's the creating the content is very laborious, and it's going to be a few years. But we're giving this a legitimate try at this, and I'm very hopeful. I'm very optimistic. Every time we have somebody professional that looks at the concept, they're blown away by it. They're going, whoa, nobody else is even trying anything like this. So once we get the data, I'll be a first one to shout it on the rooftops. But I'm very optimistic that this is going to change and open an opportunity for people to do the right thing, to pick and choose, not only the common core curriculum that's going to make your child pass, and become a high school graduate, but to be able to pick and choose other things that we are not available in the school system today or in the homeschooling system today. You can pick and choose other courses that we will design that will be offered very, very affordably. Morals, old school stuff, survival stuff, financial stuff that is not in the curriculum, that give the parents at least a shred of power back at what their children are being programmed with, because I think that's the single most important factor on society, really.
Well, you are
Sorry, I'm on
truly
another
plucking.
tangent.
No, you're plucking my
Whoa.
heartstrings here, because have you heard of the Learning Community International?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so my very good friend is the executive director, and she started out just homeschooling her children in the 80s. There was no option for her but to do that, and became a part of the law changing for homeschooling in Maryland. And then developed the Learning Community International, which is actually a private school umbrella. It's a homeschooling school fusion, and they work pre-K through 12, and you graduate with a high school diploma, not a GED. So you can be in a private school, a public school, homeschooling, and you can still access that program. And we're incorporating and working on bringing in some of the healing modalities so that people can have other choices. So what I might do is connect you to and see if there's something that you could collaborate on, or not reinvent the wheel, because she has so many licensures internationally, by the way.
Absolutely.
So I'll
Absolutely.
connect you two on that. So yeah, we have to go in and retrieve the ones that are already in the system and help them, but we also need to catch the ones before they're going in. And we've got to bring back the family values to the mother's and father's knee, to the knee of the parent.
That's right. No one's going to do it for us at this point. I realized I was trying to pass the idea off. I was trying to say, look, this is how I remember it worked. You guys take it and run with it. Somebody that's smarter than me. And what happened was it fell in my lap. Guess what? Now you're in charge of it, Tony. And so that's how it is. But this is the necessary thing. Like, there has to be an option. It's fine. It's fine if people put their children through the regular public system, if that's what you choose.
Sure.
But we have to have a choice. That's it. That's just it. You have to have a choice. You have to be up to speed with the rest of society, but you should have an honest choice. You shouldn't have to be a millionaire for your child to go to a school that's going to teach it to be a decent human in our society. You shouldn't have to be wealthy and spend $25,000 a year for your child to go through preschool and kindergarten and first grade. It shouldn't have to be like that, and it doesn't have to be like that. So
Yeah.
these are the things we're working on. There's a huge demand. It's actually when you look at it. The other thing is, like what you just said, every time I talk about it publicly, the other thing is, some people go, well, it's not great business sense to tip your hand and tell everybody what you're doing on the fly. But that's what got me here. Being transparent is what got me here in the first place. Talking about my story and being just absolutely transparent, honest, kind of off the cuff is why I do talks, why I'm here. But every time I speak about it, literally every time, there are people that cheer and jump up and down and want to help, and they're in the system. People, and they don't have the means to change anything, and they want to help. So it's a widespread thing. The only thing that I've learned is that there's an absolutely huge demand for some sort of system like this, something that's going to be flexible for children, that we can, like you said, we can add other things, healing things, meditation practices, on and on, all of it as an elective, as a bolt on top of whatever curriculum the government forces us. Do you know who determines? I always say this in my talks because this actually blew me away when I learned this. We were doing research and I thought we need to be accredited, so I need to start looking into that, because the goal is to eventually have our system where a kid could watch a child or student, excuse me. Some people don't like the word kid. I do. I call them kids. But for them, a student to go through and finish high school. So you have to be accredited. Who sets the bar for that? What is the benchmark to say that you're a high school grad? And what I found is that it's a score. It's called the SCORM score, and it's global. It's in a lot. I want to say most of the countries. I'm not sure, but it's global. It's not just the United States. But do you know who determines that? You would think it was the Department of Education or a college. Like they'd go to a college like Harvard or somebody and say, what is the benchmark for somebody that needs to get into college for them to just take a random guess on who that is that determines that.
The agricultural department.
Right. It's the United States Department of Defense. It's the DOD. So it's literally a from the Department of Warfare, from where warfare is granted. That's who's determining the level of intelligence that children need or students need to be considered graduates of high school, and accepted into college. It's the Department of Defense. And we're seeing all of the other things down about a lot of the subjects that parents don't care about that are coming down through that pipeline. And that's great. So, the Department of Defense, at some point, you want to hope that they have our best interests in mind. But if we've learned anything in the recent past is that they haven't, that, they have their own interests in mind. And like I said, people need a choice. That's it. If I had a choice for my children, I would take it. I did. You know, when I was raising, my kids are grown up now. When I was raising my kids, the biggest thing that I could make was not put them in a bad area. So to great financial ruin to myself, I always kept my kids in an area. I had daughters, so I was very
Zip
double
code
concerned about.
matters.
So
Zip
this is
code
exactly
matters.
that's
I
exact.
get it.
That was the only choice we really had. You know, that was the only
Mhm.
thing that I could really directly affect because I was working so much. I wasn't there to do a homeschool. I wasn't there to do a lot of things because I had to keep a roof over our head. But what I did do was avoid areas that were prone to having kids not pass and crime and other things. So that was our only choice. And I think in the future, after the pandemic, people work at kids at home, schooling at home, that this is the flavor of the month. Silicon Valley is cranking out online programs. It's the flavor of the budget is just unimaginable when you think about the money that comes down through the Department of Education to the schools. So it's flavor of the month, and ours is very advanced. So Maple Street Learning has a real good niche in conceptual niche. So when we get something built, I expect it to do very well. So
Oh, that's awesome.
sorry, I'm on a run. I'm on another run.
No, no,
We don't have to talk about this
no,
all day.
because remember, we just let things go impromptu. So whatever's coming through is what people need to hear at this moment in time. So these things need to be said. So you have free reign. The mic is yours. I don't want to keep interrupting and interfering, but you're literally hitting so many things that if I had it to do over, I wish I had this fusion, right? The schooling fusion, these options besides what we just talked about. You better live in a good school district. That's your number one thing, you know, and then you've got to fall into the system regardless. But, you know, we are having more and more children coming in with hypersensitive nervous systems and more empathic abilities. And because many of us are clearing the pathways for them to be able to have these, they're God-given innate intelligence to be expressed. And we are going to have to change the way we educate. But a lot of these kids, because of their nervous systems, aren't going to be able to handle going into a preschool, school, aftercare at such young ages. And parents are going to become more wise as your school and all these other things come together and are making changes and bringing awareness to the darkness that's truly in some of these programs, and at the end of the day have nothing to do with anything, especially your ability to make choices and your street smarts, because we're not honing in on a lot of that in our school systems. And we're not teaching our children when enough is enough and how to self-monetize and not monetize, but how self-monitor and self-soothe. Our children are caught. No, you got to go over the next hurdle and the next hurdle until they're completely shot and burn out.
It's all
and
a
never
list of
feeling
what,
good enough. So it's
it's
a
all a
vicious
list of
cycle.
what not to do.
Yes.
They don't tell you what to do. That's smart. They tell you that you can't do. And that's a lot of it. The other thing is that on a large scale, the American school system is a complete failure.
Yes.
The money involved has, from the administration level to the children, people have taken advantage of it, and it's been misappropriated. You see school districts that have a huge budget, and they have leaky roofs, and they don't have toilet paper in the bathroom for the kids, but the administrative offices are gold and mahogany. And so we're seeing like entire areas, I don't want to name names and make people feel bad, but there are places in giant big cities where none of the kids are proficient in reading. 100% of the kids come out and they're not proficient in reading or math. And so how can you go through the entire school system and graduate and not be proficient in basics? So we're seeing there's been a breakdown. The trend of schooling has gone south. And so it's going to be very easy. The bar is set low. It's very easy to improve on that. And you just, and it comes down to anything. And it comes down to anything spiritually. You just have to want it. No marriage is going to work if both people don't want to be married. No business is going to work if people don't want to work at it. No, nothing. No, the marathon runner isn't going to win the race if he really doesn't want to be there running. So you have to want it. And so at some point you have to want your children to do well. And there has to be a mechanism for you to do that. So that's kind of the attempt that I'm working on.
Well, the want and the deep desire is like the little mini rocket fuel bottles that you need to, to get you
That's right.
to like, whoa, that little sprint, I needed that extra boost, but right now we've got most of people living on adrenaline, cortisol, and in fight or flight. So all their systems are breaking down before they're even 20 years old. And we have to put the brakes on. And I mean, quick, fast, and have some alternatives and some fusions to offer. And so I would love to hear more about that. And I'm going to connect you with Nancy as well. So in the meantime, the second book, did you feel like you had to dig a little bit deeper into the nitty gritty to put that one together? Or was it easier because you had this wonderful person helping you navigate through the book as well?
I couldn't have done it without Jackie. She made sense of what was not making sense in my own mind. So the second book is at the absolute limit of what I remember. And it was very vague. So much so that I intentionally rearranged chapters and intended it so that it can be confusing. That's why people read it twice, 2 or 3 times. I wanted it to be confusing so that the reader would understand what it's like to remember very distant memories like this. So it would go to a memory, and then another chapter would be a completely different story, and then back to the original story, and then another chapter, it was a different story. I did that on purpose. I thought that most of this book would go over people's heads completely. I thought, man, people are going to read this, they're not going to get it. And so far, I haven't heard that. One guy did email me, and he said that, boy, it was confusing. I couldn't tell if it was you or Jackie talking, and I wasn't sure could you have just cleaned up and went one story straight through? And I wrote him back and I said, no, I wanted it to be confusing. If you were confused, imagine what it's like for me to put this together in my head. This is what I experienced. It's not an easy thing. And like I've said, I've worked with thousands of people that are going through the same process. They have all these memories. It's a story, and it's the core of their life, but they don't have it in order. They don't have it sorted out. Like there's a mystery in what they remember. And it was the same for me. There were a lot of questions that people asked after the first book that are answered in this book. So that was obviously one of the first goals. But I wanted to tell the story of the Star Maker project, and I wanted to tell the story of what happened specifically at the end of that, because that may be the very catalyst on why I remember at all, why I'm even here, why I'm even still alive. That whole reveal at the end may be the very reason for it all. So I wanted to give that a place. I wanted to give it a place in the book. So that was the goal of the book. How it worked out, like I said, when we were reading it and we go, man, it's short and it's all over the place. We had other chapters that had nothing to do with it, but they all do have a common denominator that is revealed at the end of the book. So this one has a bit of a reveal. That's all.
Yeah, and I know what it is. I'm not going to bring it up. So, we talk about a lot of the aspects of your memory as being sort of it had a beginning and an end through this time travel SSP stuff. Have you ever had your higher self or your guide team ever come in and assist you in any way to make more sense and help you feel safe and secure, and have any other words of wisdom or insight for you? Has any of that aspect ever played a role in where you are now?
I forget the chapter in the book that actually did happen. The cliff, chapter 5 in Star Maker. That was a time when I was stuck on a cliff. I won't ruin the story, but that was something that was the most profound. So I think when your higher self, when you have your subconscious intervene, that is very subtle. That they're trying to just blow you in a direction so that, you know what I mean, just so that you get back on course, and that's it. They want to be very subtle. That time, it was very loud. It was very profound, very deliberate, and very profound. And it changed my whole life because it enabled me to not be afraid of everything. Talking about this is like, I get asked quite often, like, aren't you afraid that something bad's going to happen to you? And I'm like, well, I could be. I could let it, but I made a conscious decision to not be afraid, to just tell my story and let the chips fall, where whatever happens is not on me. That's the volcano. Like, you can't spend every day thinking about the volcano in the distance. Like, there's a volcano. It may not go off for 100,000 years. It might go off tomorrow. You don't know this. So to waste your time thinking about it is one of those things. And that chapter 5, the cliff in the book, taught me that lesson. It's hard to explain, but that was when I learned that lesson. Like, you have to trust yourself. You have to, at some point, you have to say, I deserve to walk through today not being afraid of it. I deserve that. I am alive, and I deserve to be here, and I have done nothing wrong, and I don't need to be afraid of what's going to happen when I go through that door. And so that was where I learned that lesson, and it was a life-changing moment, that whole thing.
Mhm.
So that, yes, to answer your question, yes, specifically that time.
Okay. I live my life by that. So my higher self and I are like custom gloved by this point because we've dialogued for so long together. And but I didn't really understand a lot of that till I got older. And so we have a lot of kids that are going through on this earth plane, going through their, and I say kids, meaning anyone younger than me as a kid, going through their own stuff, their own entrapment, their own circle of hell. And some of it is very physical and some of it's very mental. And one of my goals is to help people commune with the fact that there is a higher self, and maybe you can maneuver and navigate a little differently through certain situations to give it as much ease or grace or have a higher outcome with how you're responding and reacting to things. So do you feel like since chapter 5, do you feel like even today, are you getting any more like connections with that spiritual side of it outside of the 20 and back and then writing the books and anything else going on?
Yeah, like I said, my life has changed. I've discovered other friends along the way that seem to have been more than one lifetime of friends, and they keep shaking out, doing the same, they're on a similar mission as me, telling about the reality of the cosmos around us. I keep meeting friends that things shape out and go, how could we have known that about each other, kind of thing. And so there's a lot of similarity things that pop up like that. Like I said, my life is in a big flux right now. Like, personally, I don't want to say I'm soul searching, and I'm not. There's not something wrong. I just can feel, you feel that like a tsunami, like that wave goes out into sea, like the water retreats before the big wave comes in. And my life is kind of in that. It's in that the water is retreating. I know something's coming, and that's where I'm at in life right now. So I know it's a natural process. Whenever there's a change, whenever you have to let go of what you have to gain more, and it's scary. It's I'm a nostalgic person. I don't like to let go of anything. I fall in love with little things, and stay with them. Everything in my life is a souvenir of my life, and so it's hard to let go, but you have to, and to move on, you gotta stay moving. And so that's kind of where I'm at in life right now, and I'm trusting my guides like I never have before. Like, that was the lesson, is just trust the process. You don't have to be afraid of what tomorrow brings if you close the door on something. You can close the door on something. You can stop what you're doing. And I'm basically leaving a career that I did for almost 30 years and beginning a whole new career from scratch that I've never done before and have no training. And because it's me, because I'm the guy that got chosen to do it. It's like if I don't, no one else will. And so that's scary, but I keep getting the wind at my back about things, the universe telling me that I'm going in the right direction. So as long as that happens, I'll keep doing it. And I don't like to call them guides. I think the whole universe is one big thing. And
Yeah.
I try to ignore that. I think because of what I went through in Peru, I think that it artificially interrupted my higher self. So you think about that, like a lot of hypnotists are like, look, you shouldn't do this all the time unless you're called to it, because you're interrupting your higher self. Your higher self is busy doing its job somewhere, and you interrupt it when you say, excuse me, can you tell me what's going on? And I think that the technology in Peru, when I was being put under, was artificially interrupting my higher self very often. And so much so that my higher self was like, look, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. It's cool. You're all set. Just go. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I feel. People keep offering me really quality hypnosis sessions, and I turn it down. I'm like, I already remember enough, and I'm already kind of on course. So I'm a weirdo that way, I guess. It's not that I'm afraid of it. I just feel like it's not necessary.
You're trusting the timing of things is what I'm hearing. But
Yes.
you're talking about souvenirs. We collect so much, person, place, things, memories, experiences. And it gets to a point now where those don't serve us anymore. And we're at the point now where, these mental programs need to be let go. All the things you collected through them need to be let go. And we're coming in a place of working more with the heart center of the present moment and learning how to navigate and find our place from there. I was describing it to someone. The puzzle was just thrown up. Thousands of pieces have come down, and many people will spend their time trying to put the pieces back together, being a metaphor for individuals, persons, places, or things. And I'm one of those people that's like, I'm on my little puzzle piece, and I've got my oars in the water, and I'm swimming away from the old puzzle, and I'm like, let's go explore over here. I've already known what that looks like over there, already been there, done that. I'm willing to go over here and have the adventure and have more experiences, because that's what my soul is yearning for. And the more that you do that, the more you up your vibrations, where you're meeting other vibrations of people who have done their work, that they're realizing that the people, persons, places, things, souvenirs, up until that moment, no longer will serve them at this moment. So it's almost like a complete breakaway and a split of yourself. But I also believe that then the other fragments of your soul come and join you for the next part of the journey, other parts of your consciousness. I also believe that guides are interchangeable. Okay, we got her to here. Okay, it's time for us to, like teachers and mentors and masters that you go through in life. And then it's like, now I have to learn to be the master of my own destiny with a clean whiteboard, no manual at all. And it feels unfamiliar. And there's many of us right now who are the pioneers of our own pathways. And so we haven't quite tilted the balance of the Ferris wheel yet. So there's not a lot of people over here doing that. So I think many of us that are at this point that are saying, okay, I know this feels really weird, but I'm going to trust this leap of faith and go over here and let all these other things I've collected in life go, because we're becoming the masters and the ascended master of ourselves. And then we're opening up pathways for others to begin their journey, which I think is where the soul's journey now is in the evolution of life, which is why we're all here right now in this moment to go through this. And it's really up to each individual person how far you want to open the window, how far you want to take your oar of your puzzle piece and go somewhere else. And those are personal, interpersonal choices that we're all here to make.
We live in some really prime real estate of the timeline right now. We live in the most influential time in mankind. Like the world right now is this is the most important time that has been so far. Like where we're at with technology and with social structure, we're all interconnected. Like just in our lifetime, the world has changed so much. We live in such an influential time. This is prime real estate. You look at when you want to be born. When would you want to be born? We are very lucky. We're in the prime time. We're seeing amazing things happen right in front of us, and it's so far it hasn't been too barbaric like the generation before us. And so we live in a very prime real estate time to be incarnated, to be on the earth right now. It's an honor. And there's a lot that is going to happen. It's a great time for growth, for each of us to grow. There's a lot of opportunity. So I'm ever optimistic. Yeah, I see bad news is all over the world. There's so many bad things you can key up on. You can just go in your room and be depressed. But I'm optimistic I like to think that there's a ray of light in every dark cloud, coming through every dark cloud. So I'm very optimistic that even the worst of things will have the better results. That's just how I feel. And that was my life experience, because I did experience a lot of bad things early on, and it turned out okay. I like to think that my life has turned out to be worth living, even after all that. Even after the bad start that it had.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Well, I'm so glad that you're here and that you're fully present and that you're willing to take, you know, the new journeys and let people know about the other journeys and how you got here. And there's multiple surfboards and canoes and paddles and you can go by camel, you can go by train, you can go by plane, but we're here to rewrite a new path. I shouldn't even use the word rewrite, because it's not been written yet from what I'm shown. And so that's also hard, because we're accustomed to being at the starting gate and we already know somewhat of the destination, right? But when you're at the starting gate and everything is blank, you're not sure, am I supposed to go fast? Am I supposed to go slow? Is there a bend up around the corner? You don't know.
Right.
So you sometimes are so cautious that you don't even get to getting past the starting line, so to speak. And I know for me personally, I'm here to tell everybody, just go live every day the best that you can. Your story tells people that. It tells people that. And I just admire your courage. And I'm just so honored that you take the time to speak to everybody, including me, to share your story, to be posted out on different channels and platforms. And I appreciate you.
Thank you. I'm very honored to do so. When people ask me, I love to talk on shows and share my experiences. It would have been an absolute nightmare to think that I wouldn't have been able to share it with to know so much, and things that checked out and not be able to share it would have been a nightmare to me. It was a horrible thought. So I'm very happy that I was able to share everything and get it off my chest, because I think the world needs to know. There are ETs and there are corporations and governments that are working alongside them with radically advanced technology and with advanced infrastructure in our solar system. There are colonies in the solar system that are up and running, and there's a greater reality that we're all going to be part of someday, very soon. And people need to know. People need to know that this exists and have something to aspire to look forward to. And so I'm happy to share it. I'm happy to share with what I experienced.
Well, I'm happy that you are sharing it. Even as a kid, when Kennedy was putting the space program together, my father actually worked for Goddard and NASA. So we kind of had to watch a lot of this stuff when we were little. But I used to say, well, of course there's life elsewhere. Of course there's stuff going on elsewhere. But, everybody else was like, no, we would know about that. We're only going there to see if there's water in case we need it. I just remember hearing all the stories. And then even in my dream state as a kid, I could see myself on another planet, kind of looking back at my planet and so on. And of course, now I know that was just fractions of me. And then also planet hopping in my consciousness during sleep state or places of imagination, where I call the God space, actually. So there is so much more than we are even aware of. And it doesn't matter. Sometimes the origination of things, it's how are you experiencing it in the moment? How are you keeping your finger on your own pulse and maintaining your own heart rate so that you can handle all the energies that are coming with it? Last night, I didn't sleep at all. I had so many orbs in my room and so much energy that I actually got up and looked out the window and I could see activity. And I was like, okay, guys, I get it. I know something's happening, but this chick needs to get some sleep. I have an important interview with Tony. I got other things I got to do tomorrow. And I just had to really sit in my bed and hit override and really work on my nervous system and calm. And I tell you, I failed so many times. I finally think I passed out around 4:00 this morning. I had to wake up at 6:45. But we need to be ready for these multiple roller coaster rides, some you're not familiar with.
Right.
Period.
Yeah, like I said, we live in a wonderful time, so get out and experience it. It's that simple. It's get out and make a difference.
Yeah.
I feel I've been busier than I've ever been in my life doing things, and it's very rewarding. I have no desire to stop being busy because I feel like I'm actually getting traction and making an impact. And that's really turned into an enjoyable lifestyle for me personally. So people that aren't getting traction, I mean, learn, make yourself better, and get out there and do something that makes a difference. God, I don't want to sound too cheesy here. So it's
You're
like
not
I'm not
sounding
preaching to you
cheesy.
guys. Right. I'm
Yeah.
not preaching to you guys. I'm just saying, enjoy your life. That's all.
Well, it's nice that you can well, for I'm hearing lemonade out of lemons, but you know what? It is what it is. You made the choice to consciously come forward and made a choice to be diligent about it. And then making a choice to just accept whatever comes, whatever may, and know that you're going to be okay. And even if no one believed you and no one bought your book, it still, you did what you were supposed to do because you let go of the outcome.
That's right.
You
Yeah,
detached from the outcome is what I'm hearing.
it was a big improvement to put it somewhere else outside of my head and let go of it. So that was a huge improvement. Yeah, very much so.
Well, Tony, people can get your book on Amazon. Is there any place else they can get your
Yeah,
book? And
so
I'll have
there's
your website and everything, all the links in the description, but go ahead, please share.
TonyRodrigues.com with an S. Tony Rodrigues with an S has links to both books. You can email me. It has a link to my Patreon show, Talks with Tony, which I have groups. I've gone into teaching remote viewing, and there's another group that does like self meditation and manifestation, a tier 3, and the remote viewing group. And then there's I have a show. I put out a couple episodes a month that are just kind of interviews just like this that I put on there. I moved them because in the 2020 I was getting deleted quite a bit.
Mm.
The information of the 20-year tour was really under attack, and I did like 300 interviews, and more than half of them disappeared. So I moved to the Patreon. It's like $5 a month. You can come in and watch them and cancel. I'm not really hell bent for monetizing it, but at some point I have to be compensated for. I do this a lot. Every Saturday for the last 6 years at least, I've not spent with my family. I've spent it telling my story on interviews and in other things. So that's why it's okay. I don't feel bad collecting a little bit of money from it. But that's on there. There are links to free interviews on the website at the bottom, plenty of free, including my very first ones with Exopolitics, Dr. Sala.
Mm-hmm.
There's a link to my memory course for people that have fragmented memories, feel they were abducted, they want to remember more. I would recommend that before a hypno regression, like do my memory course, do the exercises for a month or two, and then if you're compelled, get a regression. I think that works. They work really good in concert together. And then, like I said, both books are on there, and me and the Talks with Tony. And I do consultations too, and they got very busy, so I charge for those because those are work. It's a lot of work.
Yes.
And so you can reach me and all that. And then some new things. I am working on there'll be a web page that'll have all of the links and all of the evidence supporting my testimony from the book, from Series Colony. So everything that I remember there is physical evidence. There is a great deal of body of evidence, and most people are just unaware of it. And I don't have time to explain it in every interview. So I'm kind of aggregating that all in one web page, and that'll be on TonyRodrigues.com, so that when people ask, "Where's your evidence?" I can just send them that link. And so that's in the works. That'll happen pretty soon. And then we're going to get a cover page. Maple Street Learning has a web server. We're in the middle of content creation. We're dealing with graphics and audio and web servers, and etc. And so that introductory web page, and then a few YouTube videos are going to come out here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But if not, then very soon. Those will get on there, and I'm going to be shifting into working full time for Maple Street Learning Incorporated. Because it's a big project, and I think it's going to do very well.
Oh, I'm so happy for you. And I'll have all the links in the description too. All right. Well, let's say goodbye, Tony, but hold still for a second after we say goodbye, because I want to chat with you for a quick
Great
sec.
to see you, Sandra. And thanks to everybody for watching.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next. Please like, subscribe, and share. And we love all your comments. Much love.